And there was a great comment from one of the speakers, Ian Opperman, on day one, which said, "We don't get anywhere if we don't care." And I think that was just a great line from him.
Hello, my name's Jane Gallagher and I'm the CEO of Honey and Fox. And today I'm your host for Food Waste Matters. We're a podcast that's dedicated to shining a spotlight on the people and organisations who are dedicated to tackling the world's problem of reducing food waste. And today is one of our regular CEO check-ins, where I check in with the CEO of End Food Waste Australia, Dr. Stephen Lapidge. Hi Steve, and welcome to another episode, another CEO update with our Food Waste Matters podcast. As we're recording this, you are fresh from the National Food Waste Summit, which was held in Melbourne in July. And I thought, what better way to find out what happened and to tell the listeners who weren't able to make it what happened than to literally invite you to tell us what happened, give us your highlights, and tell us a little bit about how people who might have missed out this time can make sure that they don't miss out next time. Over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Jane. Yes, as you said, just back from the National Food Waste Summit. That was the third National Food Waste Summit that's been held. We've held the last two. Last week's was in Melbourne. Great event. Over 300 people attended from all over Australia. There was also around a dozen from overseas as well. And one thing that people keep remarking or telling me is that it's just a family feeling at this event. Everyone is there in a great mood and really just wants to get on and see how much progress we've made. And the overwhelming feeling, I think, was that people believe, and rightly so, that we can still achieve this target of halving food waste by 2030. And I think we're one of the only countries in the world that can achieve that target. And I think we've got to pull out all stops to achieve it, because with the feeling that was in the room last week, I'm sure we can achieve it.
I'm sure. I'd love to hear more.
Yeah,
And I
excellent.
absolutely, I must pick up on that point about conferences. Since the pandemic, they've been do we go or don't we go? And I must say, personally, I love a conference where you do feel it's big enough to get the information and to know that you're getting the latest information, but small enough to meet lots of people. And that's such a great benefit of actually still going to those in-person conferences. So tell us
Yeah.
a little bit more about what exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah, sure. So we had a day and a half, a bit longer, of talks and a range of sessions, and we tried to make this third summit not just a repeat of the second summit. So we had lots of new topics that we focused on throughout the 2 days. As with the last summit, I do a top 10 list of what I think are the real, not just highlights, but the takeaway messages, the actions that people can take following a conference. So, with your permission, I'd like to run through them. The first of them was we launched our strategic business plan. So 2024 to 2030 strategic business plan for End Food Waste Australia at the summit. And we asked people to download that. It's 16 pages. We can provide a link as part of the podcast text here, and but really important document for us. It's very digestible, as I said, 16 pages, but it really details how we can achieve this target of halving food waste in Australia by 2030. And I think that means we're probably one of the only countries in the world with a costed business case around achieving the target. And I think that's a fantastic thing to have. Huge amount of work has gone into the strategic business plan, even though it is only 16 pages. It started at 96, mind you. And so it's a really concise report around what we've achieved over the last 6 years and what we still need to achieve over the next 6 years to achieve the halving target, and also, what it will cost in terms of the core costs to the organisation. Doesn't include all the additional costs for businesses and things like that, the in-kind costs. But it's something that we will start shopping around a bit more with potential co-investors, so we can get on with the job. The second one that we talked about last week was Brianna Casey from Food Bank Australia talked about the food donation tax incentives that have been introduced, the bill that's been introduced to the Australian Senate, and that's before a standing committee at the moment. There will be public comment on that, and so we asked everyone who attended the summit to get on board and write submissions once that's available. I think most of the listeners will know that we still have a major issue with food insecurity in this country. 3.7 million families are food insecure, as reported in the last Food Bank Hunger report. And we really need to double the amount of food donated to food rescue organisations to be able to achieve a significant reduction in that number. And food donation tax incentives is the best way of achieving that, and particularly with fresh produce and so on, because it's not just the produce we're after, we're also after the cold chain and the transportation that can be claimed. So again, I ask any listeners to this, we'll share the link with the inquiry page, but when that does become available, please put in a submission, because it's something that it will be really impactful if we can get it up. So the third area was around the mantra of target, measure, act, and there was a number of the speakers that talked about that global mantra around food waste: target, measure, act. And so we got the whole crowd to repeat after me: target, measure, act, because it really is a mantra that we should all be living by. If you target something such as a unavoidable food waste stream, and then you measure it, once you measure it and you know the volume, then you're almost obligated to act. But if you don't know what that measurement is, if you're not measuring it, then you're unlikely to act. Let's face it. And so it really is the mantra that we all need to live by, even in our homes. The third area was we had a speaker from the Netherlands, Jolanda Dings, who is from a company called Lamb Weston, and she reported around the potential and the likelihood of mandatory food waste reporting in Europe, and certainly European countries or EU member states do have mandated reporting coming in, and we're not that far off potentially coming into Australia. And certainly, if listeners are trading internationally and selling into Europe, those the requirement for reporting on food waste levels may occur sooner than they think. And so, the Australian Food Pack can really help companies record their food waste accurately. And so we encourage people to get involved with the Australian Food Pack if they're not already, who has all those kind of the reporting templates and so on in place.
Mhm.
The fifth area was around, we had Edwina Beveridge from Blantyre Farms. She uses almost exclusively food waste for feeding her pigs, and it's one of the most circular piggeries in Australia, is my understanding. They also take all the manure and produce their own energy from that, which they produce enough to be able to sell back into the grid as well. It's just a fantastic example of what you can do, with food waste, rather than it going to landfill, which a lot of that would have. They're producing really clean, beautiful pork out of it. And of course, there was the mention of the Simpsons reference there that the pig is a wonderful, magical animal. But Edwina encouraged us to eat more pork to reduce our food waste.
Right.
Sixth area that we mentioned was around, we've just launched a new on-the-job PhD program with KPMG and Central Queensland University, and that's particularly for PACT members, whether existing or potential PACT members. We'd really like to get people in industry already who are thinking about doing a higher degree, doing their PhD. They can do it on the job, and really take their food waste understanding and their reporting to a whole new level, and really look to solve problems in their employer, with their employer, around eliminating food waste from their production chain. So, I think it's a really interesting approach to a PhD, and I really encourage anyone who is interested in taking that next step in their education and getting a PhD to inquire about that, because we really need all those enrolments in place by early next year, so they can finish before the CRC finishes in 2028. The other area we talked about is getting involved in the nationwide consumer behaviour change campaign. And that can be really anyone out there, in terms of whether it's business or government, or, we just, the campaign will launch later this year, and we really encourage everyone to get involved right from the start, because, there has never been a nationwide consumer behaviour change campaign focused on food waste. But if we look to some of the national campaigns we've seen around, skin cancer reduction, Slip Slop Slap has had amazing results over the years. It's reduced skin cancer rates by 50%. That's exactly what we need to do with food waste as well. One of the other areas that we talked about is, there was a lot of talk about teamwork, collaboration. We can't do it alone, and so on. And so we encouraged everyone that was attending the summit to write down the 2 or 3 collaborations or the new partnerships that they would strike up following the summit. Because if you write it down, you're much more likely to go away and do it. And so we, had everyone with their pens writing the new connections down, so we make sure we get some new collaborations out of the event. There was a few people at this event that talked about the collaborations that they'd struck up following the second National Food Waste Summit, and that was great to hear. So really encouraging everyone to take that next step. And the last area we really talked about was that none of us can do it alone. And there was a great comment from one of the speakers, Ian Opperman, on day one, which said, "We don't get anywhere if we don't care." And I think that was just a great line from him, and it really, I think, resonated with a lot of people. Everyone at that summit cared, and we can get somewhere because of that. But if ever in doubt, you just got to think, hey, this is something I do care about, and I really want to make a difference. And we've got the chance to, as I said, be one of those few countries in the world that actually achieves the target of halving food waste. So, overall, a great event, and a lot to take from it. I mean, this was maybe 1% in terms of my top 10,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a start, and I think there's some important actions in there that people can follow. But look, Janie, I'd like to take the chance to thank well, some of the sponsors for the event. And
Yep.
yeah, so sponsors for the event, sponsors absolutely critical. We cannot put on events like the summit without great sponsors. And so our principal sponsor was Coles Group, and we thank them for their involvement. We had gold sponsors in Tetra Pak and Argon and Co. Bronze sponsors in Horticulture Innovation Australia, or HIA, and Sustainability Victoria. Media partners in food and drink business and sustainability matters, and a coffee sponsor, Gina's Table, who is a strawberry and horticulture company that we work with, doing some really innovative things around food waste. So it was great to have them involved. On the night, we also announced the inaugural Food Waste Action Awards, and so I'll just touch on the winners there. Sodexo won the Industry Impact Award. They are doing amazing things throughout their operations. One of the biggest catering companies in the world, but the way they approach food waste is probably second to none, and it was great for them to be there and receive that award. They're a key part of the Australian Food Pact as well. The Collaboration Award went to the Australian Institute of Packaging and RMIT University. That Safe Food project, which has recently been published with guidelines, is now being adopted internationally. It's a great success. It's involved about 10 industry partners, the cream of the crop of the packaging industry, all involved. So, yeah, just a fantastic collaboration, and they thoroughly deserve that award. And the research award went to Mark Boulay, who's at Monash University. And Mark has been really important with the behaviour change campaign in making sure it's all based on really solid science and evidence. And, as I said before, we look forward to launching that campaign later this year. And there was also a Food Bank Australia award, and that went to Simplot, who's been a really long-term supplier for them. So, look, great event. I love putting on the summits. It's really tiring, but enthuses me for years to come after. And we don't actually have a date for the next one yet, but likely a couple of years. We do our annual science conference in between, we'll start the planning once the dust settles from this one.
Yeah, wow. Wow. I mean, that's the first word that comes to mind. And I absolutely love that, that saying that you finished with, which is, we don't get anywhere if we don't care.
Yeah,
And I just that just sort of wraps it all up, doesn't it? For us to achieve that goal of 50% less waste by 2030, we all have to care.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
so all the listeners to the podcast and to all the people at conference and so forth, and all their friends and family and business colleagues, and we really have to get this message out. And I just really want to congratulate you, from Honey and Fox. We've been, as you know, a member of the CRC since the beginning, and we do care, and we just love having people like you on this podcast. We've now, we've only been doing this for about 18 months now. We have a waiting list of guests, but we're still looking for lots of people to come on and tell their stories. And you've just given me lots of ideas of who we can have on this podcast, because this is all about getting the message out, having everybody caring, but also that target, measure, and act. That's certainly the sort of approach that we've been taking with the podcast, of getting people on to help us understand how to target, how to measure, and how to act. So congratulations. You must be exhausted just listening to all of that. I'm going, wow, how did you do all that? Thanks to all the great sponsors that help, because the conferences like that, where things happen, where those partnerships forged, where people learn the things that they need to learn, they don't happen without the sponsors. So absolutely fantastic. Thanks to all of those. And finally, I'll join you in congratulating all the award winners. And in fact, we have an episode coming up which features Nerida, and she talks a little bit about that award, because it does take people to step up and to sometimes stick their necks out a little bit and bring people with us. So thank you. And you also mentioned a lot of documents and some initiatives. We will put all of that in the show notes. We'll make sure that they're available. But I'm going to give you the last word. What do you want to say to all the listeners?
Yeah, this time around, it's really a big thank you to my team that put on the summit, the Melbourne Convention Exhibition Centre. It was a great venue. They really went out of their way to help us. To the core summit team here in the office, they've just done a fantastic job. Everyone remarked that it was just so well organised, and it just went off, without a hitch. And that's only because of really good planning and really good execution. So, we have most of our team over there, and everyone has their little roles here and there. But it's a great team effort, and just so proud of them.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for coming, and we'll hear from you in a couple of months, and we'll be able to review how far you've come, even in a couple of months.
Great.
So thanks again for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Jane. Take care.
Wow. Lots going on in the world of End Food Waste Australia. As we recorded this episode, Stephen was almost straight from the National Food Waste Summit that was held in Melbourne at the end of July. And what a fantastic summary of the key points, and I'm sure that the discussions were huge on many of these topics. So in terms of the actions that you might like to take, I think the best thing you could do is to go have a look at the End Food Waste Australia website and have a look, have a good search around all of the activities that they're into, all of the resources they've got. Find out how you can get involved.